Yeah, the RCP definition of behaviours that challenge or challenging behaviour has its focus on behaviour, what the person does. And it's easy to fall into a trap of just only using the term behaviour when it refers to somebody being challenging, so somebody being aggressive or somebody being annoying. You say, he showed his behaviour. But behaviour is what we all do. Behaviour is what when you wake up in the morning, you get out of bed. Behaviour. You come down the stairs. Behaviour. You eat your breakfast. Behaviour. Now, the people that we're caring for have behaviours which are of such an intensity or frequency that it starts to challenge people. And most of these behaviours are normally around some form of aggression, not exclusively. So somebody might be aggressive, throw a punch, throw something on the floor, but it only happens occasionally. So the intensity is low and everybody is comfortable and lives with it. But when it becomes more intense, that's when it becomes the challenge. Because we tried to use the term challenge to take away the blame from the individual. The problem is not in the individual. The problem is the ability of the services or those around them to understand what the person needs at that point. So when we say behaviours that challenge, it's normally because it's a mismatch. We have somebody with a learning disability who needs something or is in a position that they are struggling with. It might be too noisy. It might be some personal discomfort. And the only way they've learned to communicate that need is through this behaviour. So the PBS model, the thing to really stress is that if you're born with a learning disability, especially a severe learning disability, or with autism, then you carry around a vulnerability. You wouldn't have had the chances to develop ways of communicating, of learning how to occupy yourself. You may be prone to hypersensitivity, so you may find certain noises or lights or other sensory stuff just a bit overwhelming. So you're arriving on this planet with a biological vulnerability. And you are like everybody else, you still have needs that need meeting. And like anybody else, you will work out a way of getting those needs met. So PBS starts with the position of if somebody is seen as presenting with behaviours that challenge, then it's for a reason. And we can begin to understand the history of how that behaviour developed. Over time, somebody has been, say, hitting themselves, because when they hit themselves, people around them think he needs something, offers him a drink, offers him something to eat. Or they think, oh, what's going on? Is it too noisy? Let's move him out. So the actual behaviour starts to achieve a function. So our assessment is understanding what the function of the behaviour is. And there aren't that many possible functions. They're normally about achieving a particular goal, something positive, or avoiding something a bit difficult. And it might be out there, it might be noise, it might be a task that's too difficult. Or it might be inside. Somebody might be challenging because inside they're experiencing pain, and actually behaving like this is overriding that pain. So somebody might hit themselves because it just avoids the pain a little bit. So our job in PBS, Positive Behavioural Support, is really to try and understand the function of the behaviour. And we do this in a very systematic way. It's really important that we involve people, the individual who is identified as presenting with challenging behaviour, other stakeholders. So it's a collaborative process. The functional analysis, understanding why those behaviours occur, then lead to a plan. And what's really important about positive behaviour support is that it never uses any aversives. So when we come to do an assessment using PBS, it's really important that we follow a number of principles. For example, we're collaborative. We involve all stakeholders. The person is at the heart of it. We want to understand the reasons why it's become necessary for a person to behave in a way that others find challenging. But we're not going to judge our outcome entirely by whether the behaviours are reduced. It's not about just removing a problem. Ultimately, we want to work together to enable a person to have a better quality of life. That is our ultimate goal. And there's been a tradition in the past of using approaches to reduce behaviours that challenge. And some of these approaches are aversive or use punishments. Now, PBS will not use that. So once we start to put these principles together, we base our assessment on a functional understanding of a belief that there is a reason why the person behaves like this. We work collaboratively. We work towards an outcome which improves a person's quality of life. And that process must have some data, some way of measuring our success, so we don't just talk. So we like to count, we like to record, and we use that in the service of the person that we're working with. So I think what people will find helpful draw in on 3 resources in particular. We've got the PBS Academy website, the Bild website, and the Challenging Behaviour Foundation website. They're easily accessible and they're full of really rich information that will build on what I've just said. Now, I want you to watch an animation which explains PBS, and during that, I wonder whether you could write down the 10 components of PBS.